I'd like to welcome everybody. It's great to see you all in your little boxes. And so now I'm going to do the acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we're meeting on the traditional land of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which is represented by the communities of Saugeen First Nation and the Chippewas and Nawash unceded First Nation. We also think of the Métis Nation of Ontario, whose history and people are well represented in Bruce and Grey counties. Just want to say that we have received regrets from Trustee Morgan for this evening's meeting. And I'm going to move right on to our reflection for this evening. You know, it is quite amazing to witness the many ways in which our students and staff are staying actively engaged and maintaining connections with their peers while schools remain closed. If you frequent the many social media sites of our board and schools, you will see all kinds of photos, videos, and collages demonstrating innovative student learning activities and, of course, inspirational messages of support. At the beginning of the month, we saw some great examples during Education Week and in honor of Mental Health Week. Staff have also been sharing images as part of the Here to Help Grey Bruce campaign to support those who may be in abusive or vulnerable situations while socially isolated. This past Sunday was the International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biphobia, and Pride Month is coming up. We look forward to seeing how our students and staff utilize these opportunities to celebrate diversity and inclusiveness. For our moment of reflection, I would like to acknowledge the boundless creativity of our students, staff, and their supportive families in rising to the occasion to inspire positivity, hope, connection, and engagement during school closures. So, moment of reflection. Thank you very much. So we're moving on to our agenda. So I'm looking at the agenda for the regular meeting of the board for May 19th, 2020 be approved as printed. Can I have a mover and a seconder? And if you could raise your hands, that would be good. So I see Marilyn has moved it, and my other people is in Tracy Lynn. So I'm just going to write it in, so it might take me a second. So all in favor? And opposed, if any? And carried. Thank you. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest on any of the items before you this evening? Trustee, okay. Trustee Boyd, I was seeing somebody that had their hand up, but it's gone down. Okay. So I don't see any here. So next, I'm moving to the approval of the regular meeting of the board minutes for April 21st, 2020 be approved as printed. Can I have a show of hands? So I have a Trustee Thompson. Can I have a seconder? And Atkinson. Is there any errors or omissions that you've noticed? Okay, I see no hands raised, so I don't see any. So all in favor of approving those minutes? And opposed, if any? And that's carried. So next, we're moving that the minutes of the special regular meeting of the board of April 16, 2020 be approved as printed. Can I have a first and seconder for that? So we have Trustee Lutz. And can I have a seconder? And Trustee Thompson. All in favor? And opposed? And that's carried. You know, it's interesting. I just want to let you know that I look up and I see the screen moving up and down. So I believe I think that's Bev Sims that is moving that screen. Okay, so I have that. So is there any business arising from the minutes from the above, from the regular meeting or the special meeting of the board? Okay, I see a person. So Trustee Atkinson, no. I'm just looking for people on the side. So Trustee Atkinson, okay. I'm just looking for, your hand is still up. Do you have any business arising from those minutes? Okay, the hand's back down. See none. Okay. Next, I'm going to go to committee reports, and I'm going to put the motion on the floor and then invite Trustee Dawson to give the report. So that the Blue Water District School Board received the report of the Business Committee of the Whole Board meeting held on May 5th, 2020. Can I have a first and a seconder? Just to raise your hand here. Trustee Dawson and Trustee Boyd. And Trustee Dawson, would you like to go ahead and give your report?
Thank you very much, Chair Johnstone. The report of the Business Committee of the Whole Board for Tuesday, May 5th included the following items. The committee received a report on the work being completed by staff as part of the Blue Water District School Board's long-term planning strategy. We also received interim report number 2, and with a presentation outlining the revenue and expenditure forecasts up to March 31st, 2020. We also received a budget update with a presentation outlining considerations for the 2021 budget, as well as an update on timeline on the grants for students' needs and funding announcements. We received an update on the status of the New Georgian Bay Community School, whose construction was halted for a period of time and then started up, and I believe now it's under full progression in the construction with the opening of the ability to do that. And we also received a verbal report on the update of concerning Beaver Crest Community School. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Dawson. Do trustees have any questions concerning this report for Trustee Dawson? You can just raise your hand. Yeah, I'm just going to go to the chat. Okay. Okay, so hands are down. I don't see any questions for you this evening, so I'm going to call the motion. So all in favor, raise your hand by clicking. So I have 4. Is there, and myself, okay. So opposed, if any, and that's carried. And thank you very much, Trustee Dawson, for your report. I'm next moving on to B2, and I'm going to invite the Vice Chair Thompson to give the Committee of the Whole in camera report for May 19th, 2020. Jane, you need to unmute.
I thought I did, sorry. We have 3 motions coming out of the Committee of the Whole in camera from May 19th, 2020 tonight. The first, it will be moved by me, and I'll be looking for a seconder, that the agenda of the May 19th, 2020 Committee of the Whole Board in-camera meeting be deemed to meet the legislative requirements for discussion in camera. As I'm looking for a seconder. Seconded by Trustee Johnstone. And then I guess all in favor of that motion? And that is carried. The next motion is that the Blue Water District School Board approve the motion related to negotiations approved in Committee of the Whole in camera on May 19th, 2020, moved by myself and seconded by Trustee Lutz. All in favor? And that is carried. And lastly, that the Blue Water District School Board received the principal and vice principal placements 2020-2021 report for information, moved by myself and seconded by Trustee Dawson. All in favor? And that is carried. And a media release regarding the principal and vice principal placements will be distributed in the morning of May 20th, tomorrow, 2020. Thank you very much. That's my report.
Thank you very much, Trustee Thompson. So now we're going to move on to the B3, which is there any notices of motion coming before the board this evening? Okay, I see none, so I'm going to move along. So just to let you know, there is no committee establishments or appointments this evening. And we're at B5 on our agenda, and that's field trips. So I'm going to put the motion on the floor, and then I'm going to invite Superintendent Hamilton to speak to the motion. Okay, that the Blue Water District School Board approve that Georgian Bay Community School students participate in the Pursuits Program field trips Lake Eugenia, September 22nd, 2020, Clay Banks, September 29th, 2020, and Killarney, October 4th to the 8th, 2020. Can I have a mover for that? By raising your head. Okay, so I have, okay, I'm missing it. Okay, so Trustee Thompson and Trustee Lutz is going to be the seconder, and welcome Superintendent Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair Johnston. So these three trips are, as Chair Johnstone has stated, are part of the Pursuits program for Georgian Bay Community School 2020. It's part of their fall program. The first two trips on September 22nd and 29th are really designed to do some training with the students. The Lake Eugenia trip on the 22nd, students are going to have an opportunity to do some training around setting up their tents and use of tarps and knots and cooking in the wilderness and safe food storage, things like that. And then they'll do some work with how to load the canoes and some camping safety, environmental concerns, and so on. The next trip, which is set for September 29th, is really an opportunity for the students to do some canoeing, and it's kind of open water canoeing. And so both of these trips lead up to the larger trip, which is in Killarney Provincial Park, which happens on from October 4th to the 8th. And the cost for all of these trips is included in the course, which is $600. So the students will spend 5 days up in Killarney Park, and we'll be in two groups, and they'll be paddling from one campsite to the next. Great learning opportunity for the students. Each of the students participating in the trip will have completed a swim test, which is happening on September 15th. And anytime that they're on the water, they're required to wear a flotation device, PFD. So this is a trip that happens annually associated with the school, And there will be a parent meeting on September 10th to inform the parents. And I think they'll have a great time. And I can take any questions. I can try to answer any questions if trustees have any.
Okay. Do trustees have any questions for Superintendent Hamilton? And you can just raise your hand and I will go from there concerning this trip. Okay, go ahead, Trustee Thompson.
I am a huge supporter of these types of trips, but given what we are experiencing right now, and not being sure what that might mean in the future, is there anything else we need to be adding into our trips, or anything we need to be doing as trustees in what we're approving to acknowledge that we know life can change on a dime and we need to be prepared for that?
Yeah, through the chair, there may need to be some adjustments made to kind of how they do their trip or what it looks like. Certainly in the fall, if we're still, which we, certainly in September, we very well could be. So some of the things that we put in place for return to school in terms of the social distancing and, whether students would have to have individual tents. I don't know if we'd still be in this situation in October. I don't know. But we would probably have to make some adjustments to the trip, I would think, yes.
And Director Murray, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Johnstone. I think we will add to the minutes as well that all approvals for field trips are tentative based on the provincial circumstances, and that way then if we are required to revisit, we will revisit.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions that any other trustees have? And if not, I will call the question. So I'm just looking, I'm going down the side. I don't see any. So I'm going to call the question that the Blue Water District School Board approve that Georgian Bay Community School students participate in the Pursuits Program field trips, Lake Eugenia, September 22nd, 2020, Clay Banks, September 29th, 2020, and Killarney, October 4th to the 8th, 2020. It was moved by Trustee Dawson and seconded by Trustee Boyd Johns. All in favor with a show of hands. Okay, and not in favor. Okay, it's approved, and thank you very much, Superintendent Hamilton. Okay, we're going to then move next to the C area of the agenda for this evening, and that's reports for information. And I would like to invite student trustee Shigano to speak to the Student Senate report, and welcome.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. So I just wanted to update you all being within the Student Senate and what we're doing to try and keep students informed on what's happening. So we've been doing quite a bit of posting within the Instagram account because we really want to make sure that students understand what's happening with their educational experience. And we want to kind of alleviate the stresses that they may be having with the thoughts of, are we going back to school? What happens? What does that look like? What about prom? What about this? What about that? So we've kind of developed a little bit of a social media team within our Senate for people to answer questions and to put information on there. And we've also been helping with the thought exchanges and promoting those. So that's been a lot of our, a big focus of ours. But the other things that we've been doing is we've been working still on our strategic plan for the year. And that is going to be developed. That's probably mostly going to take us to the end of the year. We do have to, however, survey the entire student body, or at least as much as we can before we get to that point. So we're going to be distributing a survey hopefully on the 23rd and leaving it up for 2 weeks. And then we're going to be able to quantify the data and kind of see what are students desiring, what works best for them in their education, what doesn't, and then pulling initiatives from that for next year's Senate so that they can say, you know what, this is a clear view of what students during this time have wanted. And it's especially great because we have something that's unprecedented, that we can really say what has been working for you in terms of online learning. If something drastic like this were to happen again, what could we do for you to support you, stuff like that. And we can just develop a nice clean report on it, so that we can all have that information in the Senate. And then we're also working on our sustainable initiatives document. We're just finalizing that so that all of our initiatives stay just this, they have a common denominator on all of them, and it's just that they're sustainable and they're working well. There's a couple of things that we had been wanting to do this year that we didn't get around to, so those things are going into the document so that hopefully next year's Senate can do that. And that's mostly what we've been doing. I also just want to congratulate Sebastian Wall and Victoria Ernest on their election for student trustee for the 2020-2021 year. I'm really excited to see what they're going to do. They've been really kind and really helpful in being introduced to OSTA, and I think they're excited to attend the annual online general meeting. And that's really all I have for my report. I just hope that you're all staying safe and healthy. And if you have any questions, you can ask them now.
Okay, trustees, put your hand up if you have any questions for student trustee Shigano. I don't see any, but I just want to say that thank you very much for all your work. I think it's been, you know, for the student trustees and Senate, it's of course been really challenging, and we really appreciate your connection and the care that you're showing towards all the students of Blue Water. So on behalf of the board, so thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to move to staff reports now. And so I'm okay. So I would also like to invite the Director of Education, Alana Murray, to speak to the report. And it just has move in second, so I don't actually, that the Blue Water District School Board received the Health and Safety Quarterly Report Q3 for information. Can I have a mover for that and also a seconder? You can just show your hand. So I have Trustee Boyd John and Trustee Thompson. So go ahead, Director Murray.
Thank you, Chair Johnstone. It's my pleasure to introduce Sarah Hills, who is our Health and Safety Officer, and she will be bringing you the third quarter Health and Safety Report. Welcome, Sarah.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? I put my camera on as well. I have no idea if you can see me or not.
Can't see you, but we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. So thank you for having me. I'm going to walk you through, as I always do, through this report. And it seems just so long ago, the information that's in here, like a whole other world has sort of gone by us. But I will share the information. Under worker safety and injury prevention, we always try to share information with the system administrator meetings. 2 of them were done, obviously the last few were done by teleconference, and we shared the numbered memo for head injuries in schoolyards and gymnasiums. Unfortunately, many of our workers are actually getting hurt in the workplace outside in the schoolyards and gymnasiums with balls to the heads, etc. So we're trying to bring some awareness to that. We had to share a numbered memo regarding food storage in our schools, particularly elementary food storage for things like play and tactile use in the elementary schools and grades, because we had an unfortunate infestation of rodents in a number of our schools. So we're really trying to stay on top of that. So it will be interesting when we get back into the schools to see where that is. We had pension and a contractor go into Chesley District Community School. Actually, no, this was just the air quality. We had experienced some mold in the Chesley District Community School, a very minor amount, and we followed up and everything proved to be fine with the air quality. And we've had some asbestos containing material review and work done at Paisley Central School, and that was completed over the March break, so we just got that in time. Some emergency debriefs. There was the lockdown in Erin Terra, so we met with the emergency services and principal and others who were involved in the lockdown, and had that emergency debrief, as well as an air quality investigation. That was more of a debrief over emails. We have the categories of the WSIB compensation and non-compensation claims. As you will see, the total at the bottom of the compensation claims is 22 and the non-compensation claims is 25. Slips and so overexertion, I think, is the snow, and a lot of the custodians for the overexertion with the snow this year. But and obviously, again, we still have the number of falls in both the compensation and non-compensation as one of our highest numbers. So thank you, Bev, if that is you controlling the screen. Health and safety training, we continue, and even through this time while we're all at home, we're trying to continue with making sure that everybody has their mandatory training for new hires or for those who we just need to follow up with. And we were lucky to get in some elevated work platform training for our custodians before we were all working from home. So that's a positive thing for being able to work at heights in the summer months, particularly. Brent Watke of the Plant Services Department has provided a really good update for the Plant Services section of this report. As I'm sure you are aware, all our school playgrounds have been closed and signage was added fairly soon after as soon as we needed to, with all the communications that were coming out. All the capital projects are basically ones that we've spoken of before, and they're just continuing on. So for Sullivan, Mild May, and Grey Highlands, those were all discussed and shared with you before, and hopefully everything is now up and running again, that we have the provincial okay to do so. Maintenance projects, upgrades and improvements. Paisley Central School, I spoke about the asbestos work happening there. Georgian Bay Community School, in order to relocate the tech shop equipment from the one school to the new school, we need the Electrical Safety Authority to sort of do a pre-approval of the machines. Maintenance shop, they did some they did a lot of work on their washroom renovation. They've made it brighter and tidier and cleaner, and which gives the guys a boost there. Kincardine Township Tiverton Public School, they had some concerns about the workplace risk of workplace violence, and due to the layout of their office. So that was a redesign, and the office manager is very happy about that. The safety inspections, not many this last quarter, but we did have significant help with the fire departments in Grey Highlands. They are phenomenal to work with. And then we also had a fire department inspection at the SVE, St. Vincent Euphrasia Elementary School. And that is the end of my report. Again, it does seem quite a long time ago. I will be happy to answer any questions.
So trustees who have questions, please raise your hand and I will let people know. Trustee Thompson?
I'm just thinking as I read that the quarterly report piece, this may not be a fair question, but I'm wondering, as our schools have been sitting empty for this last period, are we noticing any difference? Are we having any new issues with empty schools than we would have if the kids were in them?
I haven't heard much. I know our custodians are going in routinely 3 times a week and doing their checks for their water, for the just making sure that everything is in good shape. We have, I spoke with Brent, I think about a week ago or so, and just sort of asked about if there were any major concerns that had been discovered. And there's a little bit of graffiti at some of the schools, and then, but overall, I'm going to knock on my wooden table, but no, it seems so far so good. But we will definitely see when we get back in and see just HVAC systems. You know, the buildings do like to be used, and it is they're not as happy when they're not full of people. So we'll see when we get back in.
And Trustee Lutz.
Sorry, took a minute to click all the right buttons there. Thanks so much for the report. Have we been getting, have there been complaints or concerns about repetitive strain injuries or ergonomic injuries with all the working from home and online teaching and all that? Thanks.
Great question. I was quite aware that might have been an issue being raised quite a lot, but we haven't had that much of, I haven't had any feedback, actually, to be quite honest. We've worked with a handful of people who needed, you know, a new chair or, but Alana and the Director Murray and your daily sharing of information has provided so many wonderful resources. And they're just, you know, whatever we needed at home sort of to help us with it, it was in those, in that information. And we've tried to promote that information along and with all the staff too. But honestly, I'm going to knock on wood again, but we've been very lucky with that working from home piece.
Thank you.
Perfect, thanks.
And Trustee Dawson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Johnstone. I'm wondering about the situation where students have equipment left in the school over the summer that they haven't been able to get to, particularly for as health and safety is concerned, food left in lockers that by now would be producing their own bacteria cultures. And I'm just wondering if there's a plan in place for dealing with that.
Through the chair, I can respond to that. We are definitely putting the plan in place to allow students to remove their personal property. We were waiting for this final announcement by the minister, and he made it today that schools would not be reopening before the end of the school year. So we have a plan that we've drafted, and we'll be getting the approval for that plan and be moving forward between now and the end of the school year to help access that. We have had that conversation at the provincial level because there are concerns, particularly about rodent and pest infestation. But I think that so far so good in terms of the custodians being in the school every 48 hours. They if anything has been smell has been pronounced, then we certainly will address it right away, but we haven't had anything reported at this point. I think one thing in our favor, of course, was that it was the Friday before March break. And just based on my experience, I suspect many students took home a lot of that kind of property that might be of concern. So it looks like we'll probably be able to get in there fairly soon and start checking that out.
Is there any further questions? Trustee Dawson, your hand is still up. Did you have no?
I'm sorry about that.
Not a problem. I wanted to say that I realized with what's what maybe what schools are going to look like coming, whether we're going to be doing summer school or going into the fall, is that the Health and Safety Committee is going to be a very hardworking in a lot of things, and I realize that, and that you're going to really be taking the lion's share of making sure that our schools are healthy and safe for both students and staff. And so I just really like to thank all the committee members who are going to be doing a lot of heavy lifting, and I would say in the upcoming months, and of course going into the fall. And so thank you very much.
Excellent comment, Chair Johnstone.
Yeah. So I'm going to go back to the original motion. So and I'm just looking for that the Blue Water District School Board received the Health and Safety Quarterly Report Q3 for information. It was moved, and if Bev could tell me, I actually have been very good at putting in who moved it and seconded, but I didn't. I think Trustee Dawson was number one.
It was moved by Trustee Boisjean.
Okay. And that was the seconder. Okay, so
seconded by Trustee Thompson.
Oh, okay, I blew it. So all in favor, put your hand up. Okay, and opposed, if any. And that's carried. So thank you very much. Next, we're going to move to C2B, and that is our multi-year strategic plan. So that I'm going to put the motion on that the Blue Water District School Board received the multi-year strategic plan priorities update report for information. Can I have a mover for that? So Trustee Dawson, and seconded Trustee Lutz. And I'd like to invite Director Murray to speak to the strategic plan.
Thanks very much, Chair Johnstone. Normally at this time of the year, we would bring you a comprehensive and thorough update on all the things that we've accomplished this year with the multi-year strategic plan. This year is a little bit different in lots of ways. With the redevelopment of the multi-year strategic plan goals and priorities, we were moving into, just prior to the closure of schools, we were moving into the establishment of some working groups to take a look at the development of goals and actions within each one of those pillars. And so that kind of came to an abrupt halt. And so at this point, we're deferring some of that work until we can be back together again. But we've had many conversations about what we think the action plan framework should look like. And so you'll see more of that coming later. And also, we've been working with our communications officer, Jamie Pettit, who has been working with staff and students at Grey Highlands to put together a portfolio of samples of various ways to present and market the multi-year strategic plan, and that is still in the works. And it is our hope that we'll be able to bring that forward to trustees, if not by the end of the school year, early in the new school year, where you can pick and choose based on those samples that the students have prepared. And then we will get those materials published and be ready to distribute those out to parents and community and other stakeholders so that they are aware of the actions we're putting in place to achieve and accomplish those goals. So thank you, Chair. That is my report.
Is there any questions for the director concerning the report? I don't see any. Thank you very much, Director Murray. And I know that you guys have been very, very busy up to other things. I did notice, and I did mention it today at the executive meeting, that when I was going through, you know, kind of our strategic plan, that we might be, although it talks about, I believe, safety, that we might want to sometime insert something to do with health, because that's going to be our new world going forward. So now I'm just going to put the motion back on, I guess, online, that the Blue Water District School Board received the multi-year strategic plan priorities update report for information. It was moved by Trustee Dawson and seconded by Trustee Lutz. With a show of hands, all in favor. And opposed, if any. And that's carried. Next, committee reports. So I'm going to put the motion on the floor that the Blue Water District School Board receive the Special Education Advisory Committee report for information. Can I have a mover for that, please? Trustee Thompson and Trustee Atkinson. And I would like to invite Trustee Atkinson to give the report.
Hi, everyone. The Special Education Advisory Committee met on April the 27th. I had our first virtual meeting. It was quite interesting. We had an overview of the work done to implement the continuous learning, and we had a virtual tour of the environment that they provided. It was quite interesting. The committee also received information on holistic arts-based program from Blair Hiltz. It was quite informative, and I recommend you all look into his PowerPoint presentation. We also, in April, is a very busy month for SEAC. We had formed a subcommittee for our special education plan, and we all did it a little differently this year because of the COVID-19. So we all were sent the changes, and we went over them, asked many questions, got super answers quickly. And so we were able to present that plan at the SEAC meeting, which was approved and then turned over to Director Murray, who will then turn it over to the minister. I would also like to say a lot of work goes into this plan. So I would like to say thank you to Blair and Cynthia and Nancy, and excuse me if I've forgotten anyone. They're a terrific team, and their work does not go unnoticed. And all our committee members, the biggest story was they're open for business. So continue to use their services. And that was that. Now, Canadian Mental Health, Jackie Ralph, she was telling us that she had sent out packages prior to the shutdown. And so if anyone is interested in that mental health package, she's forwarded on to myself and several other committee members. So if you want it, just let me know and I can forward it to your email. And the talk, what is it? Just one second. The Kids Help Phone Walk was canceled, obviously, but they are scheduled a virtual dance on May the 31st. So if you want to put your dancing shoes on, join them May 31st. And that's my report. Any questions? I'll be happy to answer them.
Okay, have any questions for Trustee Atkinson concerning the report? I don't see any hands up. Thank you very much, Trustee Atkinson, for your report, and of course for meeting online. And I think that's really awesome, and thank you for all the work that you and your committee are doing. So I'm just going to put the motion back on the floor that the Blue Water District School Board received the Special Education Advisory Committee report for information. It was moved by Trustee Thompson and seconded by Trustee Atkinson. With a show of hands, all in favor? And opposed, if any? I see none, and that's carried. Thank you. Next, we're going to move to correspondence. So just to let you know that I have, received some correspondence today from the Ministry of Education and the Minister of Education, and I will forward that on to Bev for distribution. And I don't believe there's any other correspondence that I have received that I'm to report tonight. Don't see anything. I don't see Bev coming online to say there is extra stuff. Next, we're moving to communications and announcements. So student trustees, do you have any announcements? I'm just going to kind of go through the list. And trustees, any communications or announcements? Trustee Atkinson, I have a question for you. Did everybody get their signs made and pictures sent to you?
No. We're still waiting. I can't hear you, Jan.
Okay. So it's been a few weeks and it was email was sent out, and I know we've done some different prompts for trustees and for the two student trustees. So if you're unsure about what words you're supposed to print on a piece of sign and then take a picture, please contact Jamie, because I think that it would be a really great, Trustee Atkinson came up with a great idea in terms of doing a collage for us to put out. And I think that we can do this, and it would be a good moral booster for our board and for our students and communities that we serve. I see that Trustee Thompson's hand is up. Go ahead, Trustee Thompson.
First, I have to apologize. I'm one of the delinquents that hasn't sent my picture in, so I will do that.
Thank
But I
you.
have a question. We had an announcement today from the Minister of Education, and I wondered if Director Murray would elaborate on that, share any wisdom that she might have in that communication and what that means for us moving forward.
Thank you through the chair. This afternoon, Minister Lecce announced, along with the Premier, that schools in Ontario would remain closed until the end of the school year. And then he, as well as they would be continuing with the childcare for essential workers. He then followed that up with a letter to parents, and we have distributed, or we are in the process of distributing that letter. There weren't a lot of details today. However, a couple more memos from the Deputy Minister have come in later this evening, and we will review those. One of them was related to some further thoughts around the enhanced summer programming, and so we will be looking at that as part of our summer school offerings that we are already, through Superintendent Hamilton, getting in place. And we will have to wait and see if there are any further thoughts from the government in terms of the framework that I understand is being developed at the provincial level around the reopening. Independent of receiving that information, we have already been in, for the last couple of weeks, fairly intensive discussions around enhancements to our pandemic plan, specifically in the area of our return to school and return to work. And so we will continue with that planning. But I think that one thing this government has made perfectly clear every day through the Premier's announcements is that student safety is the highest priority. And therefore, I think this decision reflects that commitment. It's not just about student safety, it's also about staff safety. And this will certainly provide us with more time because I anticipate that we will need to make some structural changes in our classrooms and evaluate our transportation policies and procedures in order to be able to respond to that. And I suspect that between now and the end of the school year, we will be able to share more information, and the trustees will want to have a conversation about what that learning looks like going forward. And also the government and through the boards have made a commitment to do a final report card for all students. So parents will have some sense of where their children are in terms of going into the next year. We also know here in Bluewater and in rural Ontario, the continuum of learning has been very different. And we still have a considerable number of equity-related issues. We do have a survey out now that we will be hoping we get good feedback on around that whole equity issue. And we will need to consider all of that as well as we continue to plan for our return. And I think that based on some of the experiences in other parts of Canada, we're learning lots about what is working and what is not working. And so we're going to incorporate that into our thinking as well.
Okay. Keep unmuting it. So I'm also, I just wanted to say that I do have a OPSPA Board of Directors meeting this weekend by Zoom. And I found out today in email that in fact, Minister Lecce is going to join us, and he's going to speak to us, but also there's going to be some opportunities for questions. So I would really appreciate if you had some burning questions or questions for me to ask Minister Lecce, then would you please email them to me so that I get a sense, so I can, on behalf of the board, ask for our burning questions that we, because he said he's going to be responding, and I would really hope that he's not going to put us all up on social media. And also in terms of OPSPA, I'm sure you've been receiving that our president, Kathy Abraham, has been great at sending out information to us and just what they've been up to. They've been really trying to stay connected with trustees. It actually has been, it actually has been quite difficult. And I think that I know that I myself as a director, I've really appreciated it. I can let you know that in terms of the Minister of Education, we've only, as chairs of boards, have only had 2 online, you could say not online meetings, but teleconferences, and that we get the information at the same time you do, basically through the media. I think that I know that on behalf of boards, and I've heard this from different chairs from across the province, that we really hope that when you hear the minister today talk about it, at the end of June, they're going to come up with some plans that, of course, they work with boards and directors and chairs and boards of education, because we have a wealth of information in terms of moving forward, particularly for September. So I think that would be something. And on Thursday, I have a online noon meeting where I vote on the collective agreement for OSSTF. So those are just some updates there.
Jen, there's a few people with questions in the queue.
Okay, so I see, okay, I have it in not people. So just a minute. So Trustee Lutz.
Yeah, sorry. I
No problem.
have problems unmuting. This might be a conversation for in committee of the whole rather than board meeting. I sent you and Jane a quick email about it, but I have some concerns about continued online learning and the amount of stress it's causing in families, both for our students and also for our teachers who also have their own kids at home. And so that's something I would love to talk about as a board. And I don't know if this is an area like some of our other concerns about writing letters to the ministry, or if there's anything we can or should be doing partially just to express support for, I know, the hard work parents and students and teachers are doing, and also just to acknowledge that we see the level of stress and understand what's going on.
Thank you very much. And Trustee Dawson?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Johnson. Given all the uncertainties that are going to be coming up over the summer, I foresee the possibility we may have to have a special board meeting during the summer months. I just want to bring that out so the trustees are aware that that might be a possibility.
Yeah, that's for sure, Jim. And the other thing too is that we are going to be returning to committee of the whole. So we had put that committee meeting on, basically until we kind of returned, but because this is, our school, our buildings have remained closed. I think we've all become pretty good online. So starting in June, we are going to start commencing with committee of the whole, and that will provide more opportunities for us to engage in terms of different information and bringing information from our areas. And Director Murray, I see your hands up.
Thank you, Chair Johnstone. I think I would be remiss if I did not make a comment about the use of Zoom. So the chair mentioned that she's participating in a Zoom meeting. Blue Water does not use Zoom, and I have expressed my concern to the chair about her safety on Zoom. But despite that, and I just want the trustees to understand why we don't use Zoom. So Blue Water made a decision a few years ago to not engage in any product that does not store data in Canada. And Zoom has addressed their password related issues, but their servers are offshore. They're in the US and in China. And so any data that's collected through, and you'll notice when you go back into Teams for a meeting, the dialogue, everything that we've had in terms of that meeting is still there unless it's cleared out. And so any of the data that's stored in Zoom or any video conferencing tool, it goes onto servers. And so that really is the reason that we do not choose any products that, and you can be assured that any products that are used in Blue Water have data stored in Canada. And what that means and why it's important is because if anything should happen, the laws of Canada then govern that, whereas the laws of the country where the servers are is where that happens. But and OPSPA is not the only group. The Ontario government uses Zoom. The federal government uses Zoom, but Blue Water does not. And I just wanted you to understand why we don't. Thank you.
Thank you. And Trustee Thompson, did you have your hand up?
I did indeed.
Go ahead.
I am respecting what Trustee Lutz had to say. I just wondered if you could give some guidance to us about the best way to have that conversation. I have heard the same kinds of comments from parents in my community that it's a difficult process. The kids don't believe that their marks are being impacted by that work? And is there an opportunity to stop that a little bit earlier for everyone's sake, or do we carry it on right to the bitter end? And how do we have that conversation to know what the right recommendation would be from our board? Given the meetings that you're having with the Minister of Education, should we have a conversation? I'm looking for guidance from you.
Go ahead, Trustee Murray. Director Murray.
Not yet. I think that was the Premier's when he was accidentally referred to as the Prime Minister. I think his response was not yet. So not yet. I think certainly we can put a staff report on the next committee of the whole that could provide some background information. This does vary across the provinces. I know Nova Scotia has indicated that their school year will end on June the 5th. I do believe that is a decision that the province has to make as opposed to a local school board. However, I think that it is probably worth a conversation to really understand the impact, and also to have a vehicle through which the trustees can share those equity concerns that we've talked about previously, and we continue to have those concerns in rural Ontario, and it's another way to bring that to their attention. So we can do that if that's agreeable with the trustees.
I would appreciate that. Thank you very much.
And same here. And that also, some of these questions or your concerns could be sent to me so that I can make them into a question for Minister Lecce. So that would be good. Is there anybody else who would like to speak under basically under communications and announcements? I'm not seeing any. Okay, so we're going to go to Director Trustees, conferences, conventions, out of district meetings, which of course, I don't believe any of us are going anywhere. As you know, OPSPA, for example, their AGM has been postponed until the fall, and we have no idea how we're going to actually do that, if we're going to do that in person or we're going to do it by online, however that may look. So now we're to the very, very short trustee calendar of events. It's very short. I remember looking at that, when it was sent and went, oh my goodness. And Trustee Thompson, is your hand up or down?
It's up.
Okay, go right ahead then.
I didn't want you to have it too short a meeting, so I'm.
Oh, come on now. I've been watching. I was thinking I could beat your meeting.
I am curious. We have things that we've always done at the end of the year, our grads, our long-term service recognition. I just wondered if Director Murray could comment on how we might be handling those going forward.
Yes, thank you through the chair. We are at this point postponing all of those major events, but we do continue to review other ways to do them. So I'll take a couple of them. Long service and retirement's definitely postponed to the fall. We really actually couldn't do any organizing of that event because businesses were closed. Things are just starting to reopen, so that will need to be moved to the fall. In terms of graduations and commencements, some already had them in the fall, but those ones that were generally scheduled for June will be deferred as well. However, and it was mentioned earlier about some of the postings from schools on social media. Right now is the staff have been very, very creative in sharing messages with students and families when they were re-engaging, and I suspect that they'll be looking at some ways to send some celebratory messages out to students before the end of the school year as well. And we'll have more to say on that in a future report.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'd also mentioned that maybe we could get somebody to go up in an airplane and say congratulations, graduates, that would fly all over Bruce and Gray. We actually know a person who's a pilot. She wasn't able to do it, although she did make a referral to somewhere else. So we had that conversation earlier. I am now going to move to adjournment, that the Blue Water District School Board adjourn at 8:06 p.m. Can I have a mover for that, please? Trustee Dawson, and can I have a seconder? Trustee Thompson, all in favor? And opposed, if any, and that's carried. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank
and
you. Have a
everybody.
great evening.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye now.
Keep safe,
Bye.
everyone.
Yeah, keep safe.
Good night, everybody.
Good
Good
night.
night.